My life, until recently, was as quiet and orderly as the library I ran for 40 years. I live in the small, two-story house my parents built, a home filled with the scent of old books and blooming gardenias. After my husband passed away a decade ago, my world shrank to this house, my garden, and my only daughter, Jessica. The story that follows is about how the very foundation of that world was shattered by the person I trusted most. It's a story about how love can be used as a weapon and how a mother's trust can be twisted into a tool for unimaginable greed. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Retirement had settled on me like a comfortable, well-worn quilt. My days were measured not by the Dewey Decimal System, but by the rising of the sun and the slow arc it drew across my backyard. My pension was modest but sufficient, and the house, my inheritance, was paid off in full. It was my sanctuary, my fortress of memories. Every creak of the floorboards was a whisper from the past. Every scuff on the wooden banister a story of a childhood long gone. My daughter, Jessica, was the only family I had left. At 38, she was sharp and ambitious, an interior designer with an eye for trends I couldn't begin to understand. Her husband, Ben, was a real estate developer, a man whose smile always seemed a little too wide, whose handshakes were always a little too firm. They were a power couple, all sleek cars and minimalist furniture, a world away from my cozy, cluttered life. They visited every Sunday. We'd sit in my sun-drenched kitchen, the same kitchen where I had taught Jessica to bake, and they would tell me about their latest projects, their plans for the future. I lived for those visits, for the brief, shining moments when I felt like a central part of their bustling lives. It was on one such Sunday, with the aroma of my lemon drizzle cake hanging in the air, that Ben first brought it up. He did it so casually, sliding a sleek brochure across my worn oak table. "Carol," he began, his voice smooth as polished marble, "Jess and I have been worried about you, about the future." I must have looked confused because Jessica reached over and patted my hand. "It's just about estate planning, Mom. Making sure everything is taken care of so you don't have to worry, so we don't have to worry." Ben launched into a presentation that was clearly well rehearsed. He spoke of inheritance taxes, probate court, and the complexities of property law. The words were a dizzying fog of jargon, designed, I see now, to confuse and intimidate. The core of his proposal was simple, he claimed: to protect the house from being tied up in legal battles or eaten away by taxes after I was gone, I should sign it over to Jessica. "It's just a formality, a legal shield," he assured me, his eyes gleaming with sincerity. "You'll live here for the rest of your life, of course. Nothing will change. We'll even set up a monthly stipend for you from the home's equity, a sort of reverse mortgage, to make your retirement even more comfortable. Think of it as our way of taking care of you." Jessica chimed in, her voice full of the earnest concern I so desperately wanted to believe. "We just want you to be secure, Mom. We saw what happened with Ben's grandmother's estate. It was a nightmare. We don't want that for you." She squeezed my hand, her perfectly manicured nails a stark contrast to my gardening-stained fingers. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I had raised, the woman she had become. I saw her face, and in it, I saw a lifetime of love and trust. How could I doubt her? The idea of making their lives easier, of unburdening them from future stress, appealed to the maternal instinct that still beat so strongly in my chest. And the extra money each month sounded wonderful. I could finally afford to have the roof properly repaired and perhaps take a small trip, something I hadn't done in years. My heart swelled with gratitude. They were good children, so thoughtful and caring. A week later, Ben arrived with a sheaf of documents and a notary, a grim-faced woman who didn't say a word. He spread the papers across the dining room table. "It's all standard stuff," he said breezily, pointing to a dozen different signature lines. "This one is for the title transfer. This one for the equity line agreement. Basically, it all just makes what we talked about official." I picked up the pen, its weight feeling strangely heavy in my hand. I am a librarian. I spent my life valuing the written word, understanding the power of a document. A small, quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered a note of caution. Shouldn't I have a lawyer look at this? But I silenced it almost immediately. Asking for a lawyer would be an insult. It would be telling my daughter and her husband that I didn't trust them, and I did. I trusted Jessica with my entire being. So I signed. I signed away 4 generations of my family's history, the roof over my head, the ground beneath my feet. I signed it all away with a trusting smile, passing the pen back to Ben as he beamed. "You've done the right thing, Carol, the smart thing," he said, stacking the papers neatly. Jessica, who had been watching from the doorway, came and wrapped me in a hug. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered in my hair. "You won't regret this." The notary stamped the last page with a deafening thud, a sound that, in retrospect, was the gavel fall on the life I once knew. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years, blissfully unaware that I had just handed the keys to my entire world to the 2 people who were about to burn it to the ground. For the first 2 months, everything was perfect. The promised stipend appeared in my bank account like clockwork, a generous sum that allowed me to hire a roofer and replace. For 2 days, I was paralyzed by grief. I didn't eat. I didn't answer the phone when Susan called, her worried voice filling my voicemail. The house felt like a tomb, and I was its last lingering spirit. But on the 3rd morning, something shifted. As the sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a different feeling began to burn through the fog of my despair. Anger. It was a cold, hard, clarifying anger. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. They had mistaken my trust for stupidity. They had counted on me to crumble, to fade away quietly. They were wrong. My first call was to Susan, who was at my door within 10 minutes, her face a mask of fury and concern. I laid it all out for her: the appraiser, the eviction notice, the deafening silence from Jessica and Ben. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just wrapped me in a fierce hug and said, "All right, Carol, let's go to war." The confrontation with Ben left me shaken but resolute. His threat to turn Olivia against me was not an idle one. I knew I had a very small window of time to act before he could spin his own version of the story, poisoning my daughter's mind with lies and half-truths. I had to get to her first. I called Olivia immediately. My hands were still trembling as I dialed her number. "Sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you come over? There's something important we need to discuss." There must have been a tremor of urgency in my voice that cut through her usual defenses, because she didn't argue. She just said, "I'm on my way." While I waited, I arranged the evidence on the dining room table, just as I had for Ben. The news article, the financial summary, the photo of the fake passports. Each piece was a nail in the coffin of the life Olivia thought she had. Seeing it all laid out, I felt a wave of nausea. This was going to shatter her world, and I was the one holding the hammer. When Olivia arrived, her face was a mask of concern. "Mom, what is it? You sounded strange on the phone." I took her hands in mine. They were cold. "Honey, please, just sit down and listen to me. I need you to listen with an open mind and know that everything I'm about to tell you, I do it because I love you more than life itself." I started from the beginning. I told her about my initial, nagging feelings of unease, about her friends' concerns, and about my decision to start looking into Ben's past. I watched her face as I spoke. At first, her expression was defensive, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. As I laid out the facts, one by one, her defensiveness began to crumble, replaced by a dawning horror. When I got to the part about the bankrupt company, she shook her head. "No, there must be a mistake. Ben told me he worked for a different firm then." "I know that's what he told you," I said gently, pushing the article towards her. I saw her eyes scan the page, her face growing pale as she recognized his name, his face. I continued, my voice low and steady, as I explained the forensic accountant's findings, the pump and dump scheme, the shell corporations, the stolen money. Her breath hitched. The confident woman I knew seemed to be shrinking before my eyes, becoming small and fragile. Finally, with a heavy heart, I showed her the picture of the fake passports. "He was going to leave you, honey," I said, my voice cracking. "He was going to take everything you've worked for, your savings, your inheritance, and he was going to disappear. This is what he does. He is your latest mark." Olivia stared at the photo on my phone, her eyes wide with disbelief and a deep, soul-crushing pain. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, then another. She didn't sob. She sat in a stunned, silent grief, the foundations of her world reduced to rubble around her. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "He loves me." "No, sweetheart," I said, my own tears starting to fall. "He doesn't love you. He loves what you have. He is a predator, and he saw you as a target, a kind, successful, trusting woman." We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the truth filling the room. I let her process, let her grieve for the man she thought she knew, for the future she thought she had. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were no longer filled with shock, but with a glimmer of the old fire I knew so well. The fire of my daughter, the determined, intelligent woman I had raised. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice stronger now. And so we made a plan. We knew we couldn't go to the police right away. Ben was too smart. He had covered his financial tracks so well that a criminal case would be difficult and time-consuming. And the fake IDs, while damning, were not yet attached to a committed crime against Olivia. We needed a different kind of leverage. We needed to corner him in a way that gave us the power. The next evening, Olivia went home and confronted him. I wasn't there, but she told me everything later. She didn't yell or cry. She was calm, cold, and composed. She laid out the evidence on their minimalist coffee table and watched as the man she had loved transformed into a cornered, venomous stranger just as he had with me. He tried to deny it, of course. He tried to lie, to charm, to gaslight. But Olivia, her eyes now wide open, was immune. She saw through every lie, every manipulation. When he realized he couldn't fool her any longer, he resorted to threats, just as I knew he would. He threatened to ruin her reputation, to drain their joint accounts, and leave her with nothing. But Olivia was ready. She delivered our ultimatum. "You are going to transfer every penny of my money back into a new account that I have already opened. You will sign the divorce papers, which my lawyer is drafting as we speak, and you will agree to never contact me, my mother, or anyone I know ever again. You will walk away with whatever you came into this marriage with, and nothing more." He laughed, a cruel, ugly sound. "And why would I do that?" "Because if you don't," Olivia said, her voice dropping to an icy calm, "my mother and I will take this evidence, all of it, to every single one of your clients, to your board of directors, and to the national financial press. My friend Sarah still has very good contacts. We will not just expose you as a con artist, we will make your name so toxic that you will never work in this country again. We will destroy the entire life you've built on lies." It was a checkmate. He could take her money and run, but he would be a fugitive, his name and face plastered everywhere. His career, his reputation, the source of his power, it would all be gone. Or he could cut his losses, return Olivia's money, and disappear quietly, free to start his con again somewhere else, with a new name from his ghost kit. She gave him 24 hours to decide. The final warning had been delivered. Now all we could do was wait and see if the monster would take the deal or try to burn the whole world down with him. Chapter 6. The Disappearance. The 24 hours that followed the ultimatum were the longest of Olivia's and my life. Olivia stayed with me, her phone on the dining room table between us like a ticking bomb. Every notification made us jump. We barely spoke, caught in a suspended state of anxiety and anticipation. What would he do? Would he comply?
Or would he call our bluff and unleash his fury on us? We spent the time productively, preparing for war. Olivia, guided by her lawyer over the phone, meticulously documented every asset she had brought into the marriage. Sarah came over and helped us draft a press release, a detailed account of Ben's fraudulent past and his predatory actions towards Olivia. It was our nuclear option, ready to be deployed to her extensive list of media contacts at a moment's notice. We were not going to be caught unprepared. As the deadline approached, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room. Still, there was no word from Ben. Olivia paced the floor, her arms wrapped around herself. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we just made him angry. What if he comes here? He won't, I said, with more confidence than I felt. He's a coward, Olivia. Predators like him rely on secrecy and fear. We've taken that away from him. He's exposed. Now he has to calculate his next move, and a public fight is not in his best interest. Just as darkness fell, Olivia's phone buzzed. It was an email notification from her bank. Her heart pounding, she opened it. It was a confirmation of a wire transfer. A large sum of money, her entire life savings plus a significant portion of her earnings from the past 2 years, had been deposited into her new separate account. A few moments later, another email arrived. It was from an anonymous encrypted email address. The message was short and chilling. You win. The papers will be on the table in the morning. Don't ever contact me again. He had taken the deal. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Olivia sank into a chair, her face in her hands. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she let herself sob. They were not tears of sadness, but of release. The cage door had been thrown open. The next morning, Olivia, accompanied by a lawyer and 2 security guards, went back to the penthouse. Just as the email had promised, a set of signed and notarized divorce papers were sitting on the coffee table. The apartment was eerily quiet. Ben was gone. His closets were empty.